Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the weekend. It's time for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Man, it's been forever since I've talked to Jeffrey Brown, and I believe it's the first time we've done video. So welcome, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
You too, buddy. Absolutely. It's so ridiculous. I mean, we live in the same city, but it is rare, unfortunately. Are you going to be, let me ask you right off the bat, are you going to be at C2E2?
Yeah, I should be there on Sunday for Kids Day. So I think I don't have schedule of what times, but I think I'm going to do a kind of a drawing thing. And maybe I'll be able to participate in emceeing the kids' costume parade again.
Fun.
And maybe do some signings here and there. But I don't have times yet, but sometime on Sunday I should be there.
Okay, and that's good to know for people, obviously, and it's perfect. Obviously, Kids Day, very cool. But we're also here to talk about your new book. It just came out this week. There we go, Batman, Robin, and Howard. And I love how you've incorporated the classic 60s Batman logo into the cover and everything. And you can see the Cape Crusader right there, making sure Damian is okay with his new rival. His rival/friend, his frenemy, if you will, Howard. Great idea for a graphic novel, Jeffrey. Truly inviting in the best ways of a dad to show your kid, hey, however, whatever level of Batman they've observed, that here's a really personal inside story about Bruce, Damian, Alfred, and Damian's new school. I think it's great.
Thanks. Yeah. I love the fact that Batman, there's so many different versions of Batman, and you just need this kind of basic understanding of who Batman is and like the general story, and then you don't even need to know Damian versus the other Robins, but like you kind of know the basics, and then I can just take that and not have to do all the background origin story in depth and really like break it down and come up with like a new kind of take on them.
Well, and also I think it answers a lot of those son or daughter father questions of, So like what's it like living in Wayne Manor? And what's it like, just eating breakfast and going to school and all these great things. And I mean here's a great classic example of an interior shot. There's Alfred dropping him off at the new school. And I mean it's just really relatable that way. And I think that's awesome, and it really does kind of open discussion with a father and son or a father and daughter in terms of, yeah, isn't it neat? Wow, they eat breakfast like we do or whatever. Or it is different.
Yeah, I think I kind of approached it, um, instead of, here's here's the the secret identities of the superheroes. It's like these are the people who happen to be superheroes. So I'm
Yes.
starting from who they are in real everyday life, and then I just get to dress them up in costume and have them go on a little adventure here and there in the book.
100%, man. No, and yeah, as kids get older, they can get to the grim and gritty and stuff like that. But no, and really, I love, as you just said, there are so many different versions of Batman, and so many purists will say, well, the real character is Batman. Bruce Wayne is a disguise, and it's like, no, not necessarily would be my answer. And
Yeah.
honestly, hasn't it been interesting? I mean, as a comic reader as well, Steve Englehart's Bruce Wayne is a very human Bruce Wayne
Hmm.
that smiles and has romance and stuff, compared to Frank Miller's, where Bruce is the facade and Batman is the real person and stuff. So I love what you're doing with this book, and I think it fits the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for kids, finding a way to make Batman, more relatable for them. I think Robin was always an entry point for readers, for younger readers, like because like they're like, here's a kid and he's hanging out with Batman, and like so to be able to take that a step further and make Robin as Damian Wayne, Bruce Wayne's son, and then Batman becomes this dad figure, and of course, Damian is at this age where dad is no longer like the cool knows everything omnipotent you know parent who can do no wrong. Like now his dad is like, oh my gosh, he's embarrassing me, he's totally awkward, he doesn't understand anything. And um like so approaching Batman from there, you kind of really get to like see him as human because he's flawed like all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, and also, God, you really get that new kid in school vibe. And did you ever experience that yourself? Did your children experience that kind of?
I mean, my older son just started high school, so that's like a new
Sure.
thing. And you know, most of the kids there he doesn't know. So, but and I never really experienced it. Actually, like a lot of the kids I went to elementary school with went to the same high school, and um, it was basically the same kids in my grade from seventh grade through graduating high school. But the one thing that I like really tried to use was my experience of thinking about how how kids form friendships, and how there were so many times looking back at, especially in like high school and middle school, where people that in retrospect I should have just been instant best friends with, like I just like was like, I don't really like, I don't really get them, like I don't know why
Sure.
everyone thinks they're so great. And it's, and so starting from that idea that the person that's your actually like your ideal best friend, like you start out by just butting heads, and how kids negotiate figuring out who their real friends are, was something that I kind of was drawing on.
I can appreciate that. Absolutely. Let's talk about Howard for a second. Howard, good kid. I mean, and I've been in that Howard role of, hey, John, new kid in school, will you help him out and show him the ropes and everything? And yeah, absolutely. And a lot of them became lifelong friends. My good friend George from second grade when he was a new kid. So yeah, man, no, I get it. And again, I think very relatable. And also, again, Howard's just trying to be a nice guy.
Yeah.
Damian suspects him for ulterior motives, and and I love how his inner monologue is, "Oh, all these guys must know that Bruce Wayne's my dad,
Yeah.
rich and whatever." And it's like, no, everyone's just trying to be nice, but it makes sense. It really makes sense for Damian. Damian is an untrusting person initially, and I think
Yeah.
that's great. I think that really plays into the character. So as the kids, after reading this maybe with their parents, get older and stuff and read other stories, they'll know that, yeah, this is how Damian is.
Yeah, I mean, I think so with Damian, I thought, um, he's coming from this fancy private school for rich kids, and he's used to like all the relationships there he had are superficial, and no one's really nice to each other, so he's very guarded. And then at home, his dad is like, is has this long history of like, he's not, um hasn't grown up in like the most normal, stable,
Right.
family life. And so Damien, is approaching this as like he's got all these walls up, and Howard is there, and he's got his family life is great, and he's happy with himself, he's confident, he's a good student, he's good on the soccer team, and he likes to help people, and like deep down he's an empathetic person.
Yes.
But when Damien comes, he sees Damien as like kind of threatening. Like Damien starts to kind of take over Howard's place. And so it's interesting to have, well, Howard's not perfect because like when instead of being like, oh, oh, you're even better at soccer than me, like you're good job, he's trying to like hold Damien back, and then Damien's trying to like revel in putting Howard down, and it's not working for either of them. And so it like really like figuring out their characters kind of helped determine how the story would go.
I understand. All right. I know Kingsport Cal is having fun with us and asked, does Damien become a trained assassin? Being a trained assassin come into player? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's I think so. One of the things you usually see with Robin, and especially the Damian Wayne Robin, is that he's grown up, and he's like this ultra ultra egotistical, cocky assassin, like who is going to kick butt, and um he's almost like, it's almost like he's not a kid, he's already like a grown up.
Absolutely.
He struggles because he's not really a grown up, so he's in, like a little impulsive and immature in some ways. But he's already super serious. He's like a little mini Batman.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to dial it back and take Damien's character to like where would he be before reaching that point. And the nice thing with Howard is like it gives like this other influence that like is this positive influence for Damian. So it's like, what would it be like if instead of Damian only like growing up around assassins and Batman, like what if he had like a friend who was like cool and was like, they had the same interests, they like video games and soccer. Yeah, so maybe a future book, the assassin storyline might come into play, but not yet.
Obviously, so much of not only your creator own stuff, but other licensed books that you've done have been in the humor realm. Would you ever want to do like a straight up DC or Marvel story?
I've thought about it. I don't know if I can. Like I think, it like it's like trying on a pair of pants, and that like you think are going to look really good on you, and they just don't fit, and it's just like, nope, I need to go back to like the baggy jeans that with like the ripped up ends that from being walked on. Like it's so like every time I think about like, oh, I've got this idea for like a really cool super serious story, and it's just like, maybe it would be a good story, but I'm not the person to to bring it into the world. like I always go back to humor, and I think that like that's where my strength is, and I've just like come to accept that. It's it's I there's so many comics out there that are serious. I mean, I love Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns,
Sure.
but like I if I tried to write a book like that, it would just come off as parody anyway, and it would just be humorous. And so it's fine. I'm fine. I can read other people's like serious comics.
Sure. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but now that we've talked about it and mentioning Frank Miller, who are other Batman artists or writers over the years that, in particular, you've enjoyed their runs?
I mean, there's lots of individual stories here and there. Like I mean, like, but the other main influence would probably be Grant Morrison's Batman comics, because I've always liked Grant Morrison's comics, and
Yeah.
So I got into him through the Batman and Robin with Frank Quitely, and then when Chris Burnham started working with him, I really liked those, and then went back and kind of read all of his other like of just like the regular Detective Comics series and Batman comics or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, so like those are probably like the main influence.
That's cool. That's cool. As a fan, nobody earlier than Grant?
I
Forgive the
mean,
mining. I'm just curious. I'm always curious,
I would have to like go down and look at my bookshelf. I mean, I liked Dark Knight Returns. I liked Batman Year One with Mazzucchelli's artwork. And
Yeah.
like beyond that, there's like lots of individual issues, like some of the Batman black and white stuff. I mean, I liked,
Oh God, yeah.
I don't know.
No, you're right, and I do, man. I'm so glad the black and white series came back for a while and stuff. I think,
Yeah, there's some really really cool, fun stories in those, and I love like the different visual takes. Like
100%.
I'm a big fan of how the art style can mesh with the tone of the story, and I think especially in the Batman black and white, you get like seeing these short stories next to each other, you really get like this rhythm of like different tones and different kinds of Batman.
I completely agree. Absolutely, man. And I remember even God, it's been more than 10, it's almost been 15 years since they released the DVD of shorts, kind of like what we're seeing now with Star Wars and what we saw with the Animatrix 20 years ago, but it was called Batman Gotham Knight. And that had a bunch of different, even animation styles and stuff. I'm excited. I don't know if you saw on DC Fandom the new Batman animated series that they're getting ready to put out.
Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
but I'm so behind. Like I still need to go and watch like the new cartoons that are on HBO Max, and like I'm way behind. There's too much stuff to watch.
I so agree.
Yeah,
Man. No, I'm with dude. I'm a diehard Star Trek fan, and I haven't watched the new episode that dropped yesterday.
I haven't watched any of the new episodes. I mean, the Star Wars, the new series on the Star Wars Visions, haven't watched. Haven't gotten through all the WandaVision, so I'm way behind. I'm getting
I
there.
understand. No. How is your son into superheroes?
My older son is kind of drifted away from comics. I actually like sadly have stopped picking up the comics for him on Wednesdays, because he's so far behind in reading them.
Sure.
Just not
That's all right.
which is interesting, because I kind of went through the same thing, although it was like after high school. But my younger son is still really into superheroes. He really likes, it's like Batman and Spider-Man are probably his favorites, and
Fantastic.
so especially like the Miles Morales comics, and
yeah.
So I'm always picking stuff up for him, and like with DC, the Batman and Robin and Howard is part of like the whole new DC Kids line, where there's all these, there's so many great middle grade reader books. So I actually have I have a backlog of, because I keep picking them up, and then but I'm careful about how often I give him one. It's like, okay, this week you can get this one. So I've got this nice collection of rainy day reading waiting for him. And then when there's no new comics one week, then I pull one off the shelf. It's great.
Was he your private focus group for this book? Did he read it before you were ready
He
to put it out?
He did, which is challenging, because my process is, the first draft is always stick figure thumbnails. So it's kind of like the whole book, but and drawn in panels, but it's super rough, just stick figures. Sometimes the dialogue, if I don't know what the joke's going to be, I'll just write joke in the dialogue balloon, and so he read that and liked it okay, and then he read the next rough draft is a little more finished, so we read through that, and so yeah, but it's awesome. He's also not the most unbiased focus group, so it's he loves it all, so it's hard to know is it, I don't know if I can rely on that, but
okay. When he said unbiased, I'm like, or I thought you said unbiased. I'm like, oh no, you want him to be like, yeah, no, I don't like this, Dad.
He's not unbiased.
Oh, I see. So he's biased.
He's very biased.
I'm hip. All right, very good.
Maybe he's not. Maybe
it's actually good, Jeffrey. I don't know. I mean, I can only judge from. And again, I read the book. It's great, and I love. We'll get to some of your previous work. Ed has a question. Do you find opportunities to inject Chicago into your work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's I feel like my Gotham, other than the skyline, I tried to copy a little bit of looking online at different versions of Gotham over the years, whether it's the movies or different comics, and try to get some of the architecture like that. But I mean, the Nolan movies were filmed here, and
right,
and so it was easy for me to kind of just my experience of Chicago and the city, and not that you see much in this book, because they're mostly they spend their time in school or at Wayne Manor.
Yeah, Wayne Manor. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's always a sense of Chicago, I think, in my work.
I'm with you, because I remember in the 60s, the Adam West show, you'd always see the sign, Gotham City, 14 miles away. I grew up in the north suburbs, North Shore and stuff of Chicago. And you go down, there's a particular road, Sheridan Road.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go north on it and stuff, you see a bunch of Wayne Manors all right next to each other and stuff. And yeah, man, I mean, heading all the way through Highland, from Wilmette to Highland Park, to name some suburbs and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I grew up in Wilmette. I grew up on the low-rent side of Wilmette and stuff. It was the newer homes. I mean, it was part of that 50s migration to the suburbs. My dad was like, yeah, great, let me get a little track house here in the burbs and stuff. But yeah, if you went right by Lake Michigan, that's where the country club people were, and that's where the affluent north suburbs people were. So no, I agree with you. I really do. Again, growing up with the Batman Adam West show and stuff, it did feel like the northern suburbs of Chicago, where Wayne Manor was.
Yeah,
pretty cool, man. I love it. All right, I'm so glad you got a new book coming up, and promote the fact that beyond, of course, Batman and Robin and Howard out now. Let's all remember that, and certainly so go to your not only, I would assume that it's hitting the bookstores as much as it's hitting the comic stores, or is it a different release? Is it everywhere?
It was like the bookstores on Tuesday and then comic shops Wednesday. So
sure.
So it's everywhere now.
Great. Awesome, man. Yes. And then coming soon, and I'm going to get to the cover, big Christmas release coming up.
Or actually, it's actually, that one's already out also. Although
awesome.
It's a little early, but yeah, it's and it's funny because I kind of work. It's one of those things where I like to have multiple projects going at the same time, and so the Vader books that most people know, they're kind of one page gag comics,
I
and so
have
it's like a
examples. Yes.
different process for writing and drawing those than like with the Batman and Robin Howard, where it's like a narrative and it's in a way that the drawing is less work on those books, and it's the writing that's the hard part. Whereas the Vader books, the drawing's a lot more involved, doing like the full color and having to use all the reference from to get R2D2's all his little panels right. But yeah,
I have I don't know if you know Scott McMahon, Scoot, from
oh
but
yeah,
okay, because he's tight with Art and Franco, and
yeah.
the four of us are really good friends. And anytime I'm with Scoot and Art, Scoot's always like, Johnny, draw. You should draw. Seriously, come on. And so mentioning Vader, I really was like, okay, fine. I can like kind of draw a kind of fat bullet shape R2D2, but it's like, all right, where do all the lenses and the
Yeah.
diodes and everything else go? And it's like that's the fun. But I can certainly appreciate it when you're making a licensed Star Wars book. What kind of because again, I've got great gags ready to go. What kind of vetting goes into? And I really should ask as well for Batman and Howard, Batman, Robin, and Howard as well. But tell me about. Let's start with Batman and Robin and Howard. The vetting for that. Any issues with what you were putting out there?
No, I mean it was pretty straightforward. Like I basically so I knew I wanted to kind of get back to the classic costumes. So Robin's is kind of based on the classic costume, although it's like not. It's a little updated, so it's
He's not in a green bathing suit.
Not super slick like the modern stuff, but it's got the color scheme and the basics, and like with Batman, like the blue and the gray with like the oval bat logo on the front.
Absolutely, man.
And so I was just doing sketches, and Alfred was probably the one that there was like the most back and forth about, because my initial Alfred, he looked like really old.
Oh,
and so it was
Batman
like
66 old kind of,
yeah, like just like he's ready to like fall over or something. Like he's gonna spend the whole book sleeping at this point. But so it's like trying to find the right balance of the visuals for that. But really, like mostly it was just like everyone's the final looks are pretty close to where they ended, and then there was just minor things of like details of just make sure that this is this or that's that. But I mean, like to the point where I don't even remember what those were. I just know there was like a couple places they were like, oh, can you finesse this?
Sure. Who's your editor? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeffrey. Please continue, and then I'll ask.
Jim Chadwick.
Jim's one of my favorite editors. Love that guy, and really gets. So that's great. I'm sure that was a smooth conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like, and really, a lot of it is just it's talking. Like, so, like, we did a lot of talking back and forth on like the basic story, and so I would write up my summary, and then he would give me a bunch of questions, and so sometimes in that stage I'd be like, well, normally Batman is like this, and when this happens, like this is what Batman would do, and there might be like he might give some insight into like specifics of how like a normal DC Batman comic would work, but this is also like not working exactly in canon, so it's like finding the balance of what's how far can I go, but then still keep it in where it doesn't seem like wait, this is no longer Batman. So
totally.
Yeah, I mean, but it was a really the process for it was pretty smooth. I mean, there was definitely not anything where I was like, well, I really wanted it to be like this, and getting into an argument or something about that, which is the same experience I had with Star Wars, where it's like I know over the years talked to many different Star Wars artists who have had varying experiences of how much freedom they feel like they have, and or like how micromanaging like they felt like the process was. And but my process is like really like for all the licensed work I've done has been really smooth. And I think part of that is just like I've worked on stuff that I enjoyed and like grew up with, and like it's really like just getting paid to make my own fan fiction essentially.
I respect that. Before we get into Star Wars, I want to point out Jim Chadwick was also the editor that curated Batman 66. So I think even though that's a little, maybe for a slightly older age group stuff, it is still kind of all ages safe and just kind of shows what kind of chops Jim has in
Yeah.
terms of overseeing Batman. So I think right guy for the editorial job, definitely. So that's cool. All right, let's get into Star Wars now more. And again, I'm going to start showing some gags because they're they're fantastic. So from Vader and Son, a classic moment, and I mean this is and I love this one because this is so father and son, and I mean I could hear James Earl Jones like saying this stuff and everything. Yeah, he's a good guy, you know.
Yeah, I
Really,
mean,
man, go on.
yeah, I think that like talking about how much of my own life I pour into the stories. Like obviously Luke Skywalker at 4 years old was based a lot on my son when he was 4. And but like that idea of who's good and who's bad, like just it's like when I brought action figures home before my kids saw Star Wars, like
Sure.
Darth Vader looks cool. He looks like a cool guy, and Kylo Ren, and definitely like the Death Troopers from Rogue One. Like so, like I've spent a lot of time playing with Star Wars action figures where like all the stormtroopers are actually the good guys, and Darth Vader is usually a good guy. Yoda is sometimes a bad guy.
Interesting. Sure.
So
Because he's
it's
an alien. Yeah.
yeah, it's a so like just based on like looking at like who looks cool, who looks the coolest is a lot of times like determines who's the good guy and the bad guy.
Have your kids watched the movies in uh actual episode 1 through 6 order, and of course 7 through 9, but or did they did you have them watch the original 3 and then watch the prequels, or how did you do it with the kids?
Yeah, so my older son, we did the original trilogy, then the prequels, and then we were fortunate enough that when the new movies started coming out, we actually, well, Rogue One was the first one that we saw in the theater, and then he was able to see Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker in the theater.
Okay.
And my younger son, he's only seen Star Wars and most of Empire, so he's seen lots of Lego Star Wars shows.
I was gonna say,
He's
cool.
seen a good chunk of Mandalorian.
Wow.
But he's so but yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've done a lot is talked with schools over the years, and seeing Star Wars through the perspective of kids that have experienced it in all different ways. Like, I mean, I'll get the question like, "What's your favorite Star Wars film?" And I'll be like, "Obviously, it's Empire Strikes Back. There's like no other right answer." But like,
you're right.
When you listening to these kids, like I came to appreciate like you can approach those movies from any way, and like not everyone has to approach them. There's no right order to watch them in. Like it's
100%.
like whatever order works for you, like I think is fine. And it's kind of the same thing. Like you started off asking about Batman, and like being true to that, or like worrying about like the responsibility of staying true to Batman or something. But really, I think like there's that the nice thing is like there's room for all these different ways and all these different different interpretations of the stories.
100%, bud. And really, it's just more of a curiosity thing for me because I never thought about it until Art Baltazar was telling me about his son. And it's funny because, as you said, with the action figures and stuff, he saw the prequels first. So he had a Vader action figure and a Luke action figure. And, he's like, oh, he was calling Vader Anakin. And he's like, yeah, I mean, as far as he was concerned, no, he's really a good guy, even though he
Yeah.
turned to the dark side briefly or for 3 movies. And it's
Yeah.
I just find it interesting just from an observational point of view of, I mean, and again, we grew up on the first 3 movies and then the prequels and then we saw the sequels. So now as children see them and stuff, it is. And also, of course, including all the animated product. I mean, God,
Mm-hmm.
I loved Bad Batch. I thought Bad Batch was amazing, and I like Rebels enough, and I certainly like the Clone Wars enough. But I'm it's cool, and I can even again step back, go, okay, this is for kids or whatever, and it's like, how is it as far as Star Wars? I mean, of course, I love the Mandalorian; it's amazing, but just like Batman, there's room for all these other
Yeah.
interpretations. And man, you nail it with these jokes and stuff. Here, I'm gonna show Vader's little princess because I really love how it vacillates from Leia being a little girl to Leia being a teenager, and again, it's dude, it is amazing. I can't even quantify probably the several hundred jokes. How many Star Wars books have you done so far?
Let's see. Well, the Vader books, there are 6 now.
Wow.
Plus the 3 Jedi Academy, and then there's a calendar every year, and I do 1 to 4 new jokes for each of the calendars.
Awesome.
And then there's postcard books, and I usually do extra ones for those. And
Cool.
usually, so with my process for those books is I usually come up with around 150 ideas or so for a 64-page book. So
wow,
way more ideas than will make it into the book. But there's usually like a handful that Lucasfilm approves, but we don't have room for in the book. So I, like, a lot of times I'll draw those up anyway, knowing that they will either get used for like a promotional poster, or they'll go in the postcard book, or there'll be somewhere sometime that they'll be used. So
well, here's a great image. Here's a great image that I'm pleased that obviously Lucasfilm in some capacity approved of. That's great, man. Seriously, you're a genius.
Of course,
when it comes to this stuff.
The alternate joke that I had for that one was it's Luke and Leia kissing.
Of course.
Yeah,
man. No, exactly, man. And again, we're all like, look where the story went. I love this as well. This is great. So, and again, you can hear James Earl Jones saying these lines. It is so fantastic, man. Honestly, you see that my face hurts already from smiling at all this shit. For real, man. And God, everyone's laughing at the the no picture. That's awesome, man. Good Lord. And like, and shame on me, man, because I haven't been keeping up. But did the sequels provide a lot of humor? I know you have a Ray book. I don't know if a whole book or thin.
Yeah, the Ray book was the most difficult, because at that point there was only the 2 movies, and Lucasfilm and Disney were very closed about how much information they were sharing.
Oh,
and
okay.
So, I didn't know if it was going to turn out that Kylo and Rey were actually brother or sister, or something, or I didn't know what the relationships were planned on. So like in some of my ideas, I had jokes about Kylo and Rey, like what being boyfriend girlfriend, and they would like, or stuff with Finn and Rose, and like they would shoot jokes down, And I'd be like, well, is it because like I've hit it, I'm revealing something that they don't revealed yet, or is because like I'm misleading people because it's like not accurate to like where the story is going to go. And then actually asked Leland Chi from Lucasfilm after the book came out. I was like asking him about that, and he's like, no, well, usually it was just like the joke, we didn't like the joke as
Okay.
much as other jokes. So it's like, oh, well, that still doesn't really help me to know. Like, so, um, yeah, so there just wasn't as much material to draw on with the new trilogy. Whereas,
Okay.
now that there's, I mean, and I was writing that book when there was only the two films at that point.
Sure.
So,
Will we possibly see? Is this already in the works? I hope I'm right. A Vader as grandpa to Kylo Ren. Because wouldn't it be great to see the two helmets, and again, tiny Kylo with like Grandpa
yeah,
Vader.
I mean, I don't have plans for one yet. It is something I've thought about, like, or even just having Luke and Leia as kind of, I mean, they're a little older in the Rey and Pal's book, um but yeah, there's just, it didn't have the right feel for any of the books at the time. And obviously like the new one is holiday themed, so
Right.
it kind of goes back to the original Darth Vader and Son book where Luke and Leia are, like 4 or 5 years old.
Sure. Absolutely, man. No, this is great. So that is out now. A Vader Family Sithmas. Absolutely. And again, Batman Robin and Howard, excuse me, also out now, and that's wonderful. You're going to be at C2E2 in about a month on Kids Day on Sunday, so we're looking
Yep.
forward to that. And yeah, man. I mean, will you have new announcements coming in 2022?
I'm sure. Yeah. So I'm working on stuff, and yeah. So I don't know when I'll get get to start announcing stuff. So yeah. So there might be another Batman and Robin and Howard story at
Wonderful.
some point. So it's funny because when I started the book, I was just excited, like, okay, this is my chance to do Batman. I'll do one Batman book, and I can, check that off my like childhood dreams list.
Sure.
And it was great, and I was, finished it. But now that it's come out and like hearing people talk about it and what they're responding to, I'm like, oh man, this is starting to give me all kinds of ideas.
Wonderful.
And um, like, and hearing people, how much people connect with the characters and the story, I'm like, oh, maybe there isn't more to do. So there might be some more Batman and Robin and Howard, but when that would be, I can't say.
Okay. Are there other, without spoiling, and I don't want to get in, you don't have to announce anything before it's time. Are there other DC or even Marvel characters that you'd like to do this approach with?
Um, I mean, there's tons of characters I love to do things with, but nothing that it's too early to talk about anything else. So, but yeah, there'll be some cool stuff. Yeah, a Baby Yoda book would be fun. That one's a little more complicated just because of the Mandalorian and the timing of the shows, and that's another one too where, I mean, there's 2 seasons, which in terms of time, like, if you think each episode's like 45 minutes, an hour, and there's 10 episodes each season. So there's like, in terms of amount of time, it's actually like 6 movies worth of material, but it's weirdly, it doesn't feel like there's as much. So um, that one's a little hard. It might need a third season before I can and
Okay.
figure
Well,
out,
well,
crack
again,
that code.
obviously they're listening to you, and certainly, and truly, man, I said this before we started recording. I'm so glad that they get you, and that you've made so many Star Wars books, and I do really hope that this is the start of more Batman and DC books. Here, BM has a suggestion. He thinks the Super Sons book would be great. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
really,
I've been fortunate that, like I said, my experience with the books has been really smooth, and it's been like, just part of it is just the right timing for things. Like, I don't know that Darth Vader and Son would have been made, you know, if 4 years later or 4 years earlier. It was just, like, hit it at just the right time. Or even
yes,
like the doing this book with DC Kids, like they kind of started putting the books out, and it was just the right timing for me and my schedule, and like had the right idea clicked, and then it was just like, and like you say, they got it. Like, they really just they understood the story, and like, and how it worked, and were totally supportive. So
well done, dude. Excellent. And again, both of these books are available now. Batman and Robin and Howard from DC, and I don't know who publishes Vader.
that's
The
Chronicle Books.
Chronicle Books, everybody. The Star Wars Jeffrey Brown collection. Always great stuff. Great humor in both. If you want gags, go to the Star Wars stuff. If you want a really great story to share with your children and indoctrinate them, or give them more to talk about beyond what we see in the cartoons or whatever comics they're reading, Batman and Robin and Howard absolutely up there. And truly, man, as always, continued success. Great to see you. Please, let's not wait the many years that had been
Yeah.
between
Yeah,
conversations.
let's
Let's
keep it under 10 next time.
man, it probably has been 10, Jeffrey. Jesus, you're right
No,
about that. Wow, good. I was telling him, man. I mean, his beard looks amazing, and it's like I'm not used to seeing Jeffrey with gray in
it's
the
yeah,
beard and
it's
everything.
it's it's much grayer than the last time.
Yeah, well, it was all brown
No.
last time I saw you, much like your name, man. It's totally true. So, hey, tomorrow I'm doing a great online convention. If you don't mind sitting through the commercial, Jeffrey. Bill Cox, who has an amazing art, kind of great cross section of people who own art, and also the creators themselves and the art buying audience. Comic Art Fans is the name of the
Oh yeah.
website. Twice a year, he has a great online show, and I've been very fortunate to be a moderator on a lot of the panels. And tomorrow I'm talking to Dave Marquez and Brian Bendis, Alex Saviek talking about great days both in the comic books and comic strips with Spider-Man and a lot of other Marvel stuff. Jamal Eigel and I will be talking, and Ryan Dunleavy and Fred Van Lente about their wonderful series of documentary comics, the comic book history of comic books,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorite. There you go, man. Exactly. And it's great. I'm glad you're aware of that stuff, because I think there's a lot of complementary styles between yourself and Ryan Dunleavy and everything. So that's great. So yeah, that's happening all tomorrow. If you follow me on Facebook and Twitter, I'll have exact times, but it's going to be mid-afternoon till evening time on the East Coast, and I'm very excited to do it. So join me tomorrow for more Word Balloon Live. Until